Damien Steele wasn't used to letting his schedule bend for anything but business. As the CEO of Steele Innovations, a global tech empire, his days revolved around board meetings, product launches, and jetting off to overseas summits. Yet here he was, staring at a sleek, cream-colored envelope that had arrived at his penthouse suite, a wedding invitation from his best friend since childhood, Tyler Monroe. They'd been neighbors in a humble neighborhood long before Damien's company took off and minted him a billionaire. Tyler had stuck by him through thick and thin. Even after Damien moved to a glass skyscraper downtown, they'd stayed close, grabbing beers when time allowed and reminiscing about the days they shot hoops with frayed basketball nets on the street. Tyler had met his fiancée Helen a couple of years ago, and now they were tying the knot at a quaint coastal venue. Damien ran a thumb over the embossed lettering, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Tyler Monroe and Helen Parker." He smiled at the invitation's subtle design, much like Tyler himself, unpretentious yet classy. The date was only 3 weeks away. Normally, Damien would scramble to fit personal events around his hectic schedule, but for Tyler, he'd move mountains if needed. Tyler texted a few days later, "Wouldn't be the same without you there. Think you can attend the rehearsal dinner? Also, quick heads up, I want you in the wedding party. Best man or groomsman, you choose." That sense of easy camaraderie warmed Damien. He decided, then and there, he'd show up wholeheartedly. No matter what awaited him at that seaside venue, he planned to be present. He had no idea that this wedding would introduce him to someone who would change everything, someone he couldn't stop thinking about, long after the last dance ended. The wedding took place at Harborview Estate, an old-world villa perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Its sweeping lawns were dotted with bright flowers, and a gentle sea breeze ruffled the ribbons wrapped around the white chairs set up for the ceremony. The estate's main house was a blend of rustic wood beams and elegant architecture, exuding warmth and romance. Damien arrived a day early, wanting time to catch up with Tyler before the flurry of wedding activities. He pulled up in a sleek black car, stepping out in casual slacks and a button-down. Despite his net worth, he disliked attracting attention when it wasn't a business affair. The staff at the villa greeted him politely, but it was clear they recognized his name from tabloids or business news. He could see flickers of curiosity in their eyes as he checked in. Inside, he found Tyler in the lounge area, fiddling with place cards. "Dame," Tyler's face lit up, and they exchanged a warm hug. "Couldn't miss your big day," Damien quipped, smirking. "So how's it going? Any crises needing rescue?" Tyler laughed. "Just minor last-minute details. Helen's got most of it under control, and the wedding planner is top-notch. But I do need a favor. I want you to stand with me as my best man. My brother bowed out from the role after getting deployed, and I'd like it to be you, if you're up for it." Damien's chest tightened with a pleasant swell of emotion. "Of course," he said. "I'm honored." Tyler clapped him on the shoulder. "Glad to hear it. Also, you'll meet Helen's best friend soon. She's the maid of honor. You two will be sharing some of the wedding responsibilities, like giving toasts, coordinating photo sessions, that kind of thing." He paused, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "Name's Evelyn Banks. She's great. Just be ready for some strong opinions. She's been Helen's partner in crime since college." Damien merely shrugged, used to dealing with formidable personalities in boardrooms. He figured he could handle some straightforward wedding tasks, but he didn't realize just how big an impression Evelyn was going to make on him. The following afternoon, they held a rehearsal on the lawn. Rows of white chairs faced a simple wooden arch draped with flowers. Helen fussed over the details with the wedding planner, while Tyler kept glancing at his watch, wanting to ensure everything ran smoothly. Damien hung back, letting the bride and groom settle the last bits of decor. He was typing a quick work email on his phone when he heard a bright, clear voice. "You must be Damien." He looked up to see a woman with wavy auburn hair pinned half up, a notepad in hand. She wore a flowy sundress that captured the sea breeze. Her eyes sparked with intelligence, and when she smiled, it lit her entire face. "That's me," Damien replied. He tucked his phone away, instantly feeling rude for having it out. "And you're Evelyn?" She nodded, stepping closer. "Evelyn Banks, Maid of honor, keeper of Helen's sanity, or so I try. She cast a glance at Helen, who was untangling ribbons from a centerpiece, then flashed Damien a grin. I hear you're the best man. Damien cleared his throat. Apparently so. A last-minute role, but I'll do my best. I'll try not to disrupt any carefully laid plans. Oh, don't worry, Evelyn chuckled. Helen's the calm, methodical planner. I'm the one who improvises if something goes wrong. We'll get along fine. Then her tone softened. Thank you for being here for Tyler. He speaks so fondly of you. Warmth seeped through Damien's chest. He's my oldest friend, he said simply. I wouldn't miss it. They shook hands more formally, though Evelyn teased. A handshake? That's so corporate. We're practically family now. This wedding's small enough that we all become each other's shoulders to lean on. Damien gave a half smile, charmed by her easygoing sincerity. Fair enough, he replied, slightly disarmed. He noticed Tyler shooting him a knowing smirk from across the lawn, as if to say, Told you she'd make an impression. Indeed, she already had. That evening, the wedding party and close family gathered at an outdoor pavilion for the rehearsal dinner. Twinkling fairy lights were strung overhead, and the soft sound of acoustic guitar drifted through the warm night air. Tables covered with pastel linens were set with simple but elegant place settings. Damien took a seat next to Tyler and across from Evelyn. Helen and a few family members joined them. The conversation flowed easily, with Tyler recounting embarrassing childhood stories about Damien's early days coding in the library, while others played sports. Damien listened with a half grin, not minding the good-natured ribbing. He was proud of his nerdy past. After toasts were made and dinner was served, Damien drifted away from the group to admire the estate's nighttime view, the ocean shimmering under the moon. The hush of the waves soothed him in a way no city skyline could. He was so used to the metallic hum of downtown that he'd forgotten how peaceful starlight on the water could be. Enjoying the quiet? Came a gentle voice. He turned to see Evelyn approaching with 2 glasses of chilled wine. She offered him one. Figured you might like a drink. Weddings can be overwhelming, even for the groomsmen. He accepted it. Thanks, he said, lifting the glass in a small, appreciative gesture. Though I should be the one fetching you a drink, shouldn't I? You've probably worked twice as hard as me on the wedding details. Evelyn laughed softly. I love weddings. I'm a romantic, I guess, which is funny because Helen usually calls me the practical one. But I enjoy seeing people celebrate what matters most: love, friendship, new beginnings. Damien studied her expression in the moonlight, noticing the sincerity in her words. In his world, relationships were often transactional. It was refreshing to meet someone who seemed genuinely sentimental about romance and commitment. I admire that, he said. Too many people focus on the spectacle and forget the meaning behind it. Evelyn nodded, her gaze drifting to the water. Exactly. This place, these decorations, none of it would matter if Tyler and Helen weren't so in love. I'm just making sure the environment matches their joy. She turned back to him with a curious tilt of her head. Is that too mushy for a tech mogul? He chuckled, swirling the wine in his glass. Not at all. I might not say it often, but I respect authenticity. And you, Ms. Banks, are quite authentic. The spark in her eyes reflected a budding warmth. Glad I made a good impression. You're not as intimidating as I thought you'd be. Give it time, he joked. But in truth, her presence was disarming him in the best possible way. They lingered by the terrace, sharing light conversation about everything from wedding anecdotes to her career in graphic design. By the time they returned to the group, Damien couldn't shake the sense that Evelyn was someone he wanted to know far beyond this wedding weekend. The next morning arrived with a swirl of organized chaos. Florists delivering fresh bouquets, the photographer scouting good angles, family members trying not to step on each other's toes. The wedding planner scurried around, checking her clipboard. The ceremony was just hours away. Damien found himself assigned various tasks: ensuring the groomsmen's suits had all arrived, checking that the ring bearer's tiny tux fit, and verifying the DJ's sound system. He handled each responsibility with the same cool efficiency he used to oversee multi-million-dollar deals. At one point, Evelyn rushed past, nearly colliding with him. Whoa, he said, steadying her elbow. Where's the fire? She exhaled, cheeks flushed. We can't find Tyler's cufflinks. the special ones Helen had engraved for him. He left them in a random box, apparently. She scanned the space, eyes anxious. Damien smirked, recalling Tyler's absent-mindedness. Let me guess, he said they'd be safe in the gift room or something? Evelyn nodded grimly. Exactly. Problem is, the gift room's now overflowing with boxes. I told Tyler not to. Never mind. She let out a small laugh at her own frustration. Could you help me look? Without hesitation, Damien followed her to a side lounge where dozens of wrapped presents and packaging materials were piled. They spent a solid 15 minutes rummaging through boxes. Damien eventually found a small leather case tucked behind some centerpieces. Inside gleamed silver cufflinks etched with the date of the wedding. Here we go. Evelyn let out a relieved sigh. Thank goodness. We almost had a meltdown. Crisis averted, Damien said, handing them over. For a brief second, their fingers brushed. A fleeting jolt of recognition passed between them, an electric sense that they worked well together in more ways than one. You're a lifesaver, she said softly, storing them safely in her tote. I owe you. He grinned. I'm sure I'll collect on that favor at some point. She smiled back, her expression hinting at possibilities beyond wedding tasks. At last, the guests took their seats on the lawn. Pale petals lined the aisle, and gentle classical music played as the wedding party prepared to walk. Damien stood at Tyler's side, a crisp suit tailored to perfection. Evelyn, across the aisle with Helen's bridesmaids, wore a flowing lavender dress that complemented her auburn hair. Damien tried to focus on Tyler, but he caught himself glancing Evelyn's way. Her elegance in that pastel gown quietly took his breath. When the music shifted, the audience rose for the bride's entrance. Helen glided down the aisle on her father's arm, her smile radiant and tearful. Tyler looked equally emotional, drawing a small grin from Damien. He's never looked happier, Damien thought. I'm glad I'm here to witness this. The officiant led them through heartfelt vows, each word resonating with the love that filled the air. There was laughter, tears, promises of lifelong partnership. Damien felt an unfamiliar tug at his chest, the beauty of the moment piercing his usually guarded heart. Then, with a jubilant flourish, Tyler and Helen were pronounced husband and wife. Applause roared from the guests, mingling with the bright midday sun. Evelyn caught Damien's eye across the aisle, tears glistening at the corners of her own. She mouthed, "We did it," as though they were co-conspirators in a mission. He found himself smiling back, a thrill coursing through him for reasons he couldn't fully explain. The reception followed under a grand tent draped with sheer fabrics and fairy lights. Tables were adorned with sea glass centerpieces. A lively string quartet transitioned into a DJ set after dinner, and soon the dance floor filled with couples spinning to a mix of oldies and pop hits. Damien, usually reserved at social gatherings, found himself surprisingly at ease. He gave a short best man speech that wove humor and heartfelt emotion, recounting how Tyler's loyalty helped him survive their tough neighborhood, how Tyler's unwavering optimism had always been an inspiration. The crowd responded with cheers, and even Tyler teared up, pulling Damien into a brotherly hug. Evelyn's maid of honor speech followed, painting a picture of Helen's warmth and drive, sprinkled with anecdotes of college adventures and comedic mishaps. Her expressive style had everyone riveted, from older relatives to the youngest guests. Damien watched her intently, admiring her poise and sincerity. After the formal dances, the music shifted to more upbeat tunes. Tyler dragged Damien onto the dance floor, teasing him for being a buzzkill if he didn't at least try. Meanwhile, Evelyn was coaxed by Helen into dancing with the bridesmaids. Eventually, a slow song wafted through the speakers, gentle piano chords that signaled pairs to come together under the twinkling lights. Damien lingered at the edge of the floor, half wishing he had an excuse to vanish, but a warm hand tapped his shoulder. Evelyn stood there, a hint of shyness in her smile. I hate dancing alone, she said softly. Care to join me? He inhaled, ignoring the mild flutter in his stomach. I'd love to, he replied. Taking her hand, he led her onto the parquet where other couples swayed gently. The glimmering lights overhead cast a soft glow across her face, and the music wrapped them in a tender cocoon. He placed a hand at her waist, and they moved in a slow circle, stepping carefully to the melody. Evelyn's cheeks were faintly flushed. Thanks for not letting me stand here awkwardly, she teased, voice hushed. Damien's lips curved. I think you'd manage just fine on your own, but I'm glad you asked me. Truth be told, I'm not used to slow dancing. Me neither, she admitted, a bit of a laugh escaping. I'm definitely more comfortable planning a wedding than being in the spotlight of one. A comfortable silence stretched as they continued swaying. He felt each subtle shift of her body, her slender hand resting in his. The quiet press of her chest against him brought an unexpected surge of warmth. She was real, down to earth, and a rare blend of practicality and romantic spirit. A minute later, the song ended, transitioning to a faster track. They parted with a polite laugh, but something glimmered between them, unspoken and undeniable. As the evening progressed, guests meandered around the dessert tables, sampling slices of the wedding cake or sipping champagne. Tyler and Helen, after greeting everyone, stole a moment to watch the fireworks display arranged over the water. The newlyweds stood arm in arm at the cliff's edge, awash in the glow of bursts of color. Damien, feeling a need for fresh air away from the crowd, wandered across the lawn to a small gazebo near the cliff. He found Evelyn there, sitting on a wooden bench, her lavender dress trailing softly against the grass. Mind some company? He asked quietly, stepping inside the gazebo. Not at all, she said, patting the space beside her. Just needed a breather from all the excitement. He sat, letting the muted booms of distant fireworks punctuate the hush. Multicolored reflections danced across the waves below. Every flicker illuminated Evelyn's features, a mixture of contentment and wistfulness. Weddings do that to me, she murmured, almost reading his mind. They're beautiful, but afterwards I always feel this lingering sense of, I don't know, longing? Like I want that kind of connection someday, too. Damien's gaze flicked from the ocean to her. You sound like someone who truly values deep relationships. She shrugged, a soft vulnerability in her eyes. I've dated off and on. Nothing really stuck. Maybe I'm too picky. She laughed self-consciously. Helen says I overthink everything. I guess I'd rather wait for the right person than settle. He nodded, a pang of recognition stirring. In my world, it's hard to know if someone wants me or my success, so I've kept my guard up for a long time. Evelyn turned to him, expression gentle. I get that. Must be difficult to trust when everyone knows your name and your wealth. She reached out, placing a light hand on his arm. But you seem genuine, Damien. Her words loosened something inside him, a tension he didn't realize he carried. Before he could stop himself, he spoke quietly. You make it easy to be genuine. I don't recall the last time I've been this comfortable with someone new. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The ocean's breeze ruffled the stray tendrils of her hair. Finally, her eyes locked onto his, and she gave him a slow smile. I'm glad, she whispered. A surge of affection swept him up. He'd faced countless negotiations, conquered corporate takeovers, yet never felt this nervous, this alive. In the hush of the gazebo, with fireworks still lighting the sky, Damien leaned in. Gently, tentatively, he pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft, warm, a sweet promise rather than a demand. Evelyn's initial surprise melted into acceptance, her hand drifting to his shoulder. She tasted of champagne and the strawberry from dessert, an exquisite combination that tangled with his senses. When they finally broke apart, breath mingling in the night air, their eyes stayed locked. Evelyn swallowed. I didn't see that coming, she admitted, laughing softly. But I'm not complaining. Damien's lips curved into an unguarded smile. Me neither, he breathed. They lingered in the gazebo a while longer, arms loosely around each other, the wedding festivities continuing in the background. In that tucked-away corner of the lawn, time seemed to slow, every moment precious and stolen from the rest of the world. The next day, the estate bustled with post-wedding farewells. Tyler and Helen planned to depart for their honeymoon later that afternoon, heading to a tropical island escape. Relatives loaded cars with suitcases and leftover flowers, hugging the newlyweds goodbye. Damien rose early, a swirl of thoughts about Evelyn occupying his mind. What happens now? He wasn't the type for casual flings. Yet his life was in the city, jam-packed with business obligations. Did Evelyn live far? Could they realistically see each other often? Stepping out onto the terrace, he found her leaning on the railing, sipping coffee. She looked cozy in a cardigan over jeans, her hair still slightly tousled from sleep. She offered him a soft, shy smile when he joined her. "Morning," she said, voice low. "You sleep okay?" He exhaled a short laugh. "Barely, too much on my mind. You?" "Same." She set her mug down. "Look, about last night." He gently touched her hand, halting any potential apologies. "It was wonderful," he said. "Unless you regret it?" Her eyes shone as she shook her head. "No regrets," she murmured. "Just a bit overwhelmed. Everything changed so fast. I'm not sure how we proceed." Damien nodded, his chest constricting with the same question. "I live downtown. My schedule is a bit insane, but I want to see you again, soon." She hesitated, nibbling her lip. "I'm based in a neighboring city, about an hour's drive. My job's mostly freelance design, so I can be flexible, but I do have local commitments. Still, I'm open to figuring this out if you are." A glimmer of relief spread through Damien. "Then we'll find a way," he said. "I can make time for what matters." She exhaled, a small laugh escaping. "We might have to take it slow with all the chaos in our lives." He smiled. "Slow is fine, as long as we're moving forward." Just then, Tyler jogged up, bright-eyed from wedded bliss. "Hey guys, there you are. Helen and I are about to greet everyone at brunch. Join us?" Evelyn squeezed Damien's hand once before stepping away. "We'll be right there." The three walked together toward the brunch area. Helen and Tyler looked too happy for words. Damien caught Tyler's curious glance, a grin forming on Tyler's face as if he'd sensed the shift between Damien and Evelyn. But Tyler didn't tease them, simply beckoned them to join the others for the final wedding gathering. Brunch concluded with warm hugs, leftover cake slices for the road, and final well wishes. Helen tossed her bouquet a second time among the remaining guests, causing a playful scramble of bridesmaids. Evelyn politely avoided that madness, but shot Damien an amused smirk from the sidelines. When it was time to depart, Damien and Evelyn stood near the parking area, the sun climbing high overhead. Tyler and Helen waved from the limo that would whisk them to the airport, confetti swirling behind them. Evelyn turned to Damien, a spark of anticipation in her gaze. "So, guess this is goodbye for now?" He slipped a note card into her hand, his personal phone number scrawled in a neat line. "Call me, day or night. I'll do the same. If I'm out of the country, we'll video chat." She peered at the card, smiling softly. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" He stepped closer, letting the hush of the retreating crowd give them a moment's privacy. "I've never been more serious. Something about you, about us. I don't want to let it go." Evelyn's eyes brimmed with the same sincerity that had drawn him in from the start. She hesitated only a second before pressing on her toes to kiss him, a brief but tender affirmation. "Then let's see where it goes," she whispered, voice laced with hope. They parted with one last embrace. Damien watched her climb into her small sedan, cradling the note card and flashing him a bright wave as she drove off. He remained by his own car for a moment, heart surging with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The best friend's wedding was over, but in its place, a new chapter had begun, one that could lead to a deeper kind of partnership he'd never dared imagine. As he headed back toward the main entrance, mentally outlining the next steps for contacting her, he felt an unaccustomed lightness. Typically, after an event, he'd check his phone for urgent messages or plan a business flight. But now, all he wanted was to figure out how soon he could see Evelyn again. He texted Tyler, "You might have done more than get married yesterday. You might have introduced me to my future." Tyler's immediate response came with a string of winking emojis and a congratulatory message. Damien chuckled, pocketing the phone. That day, driving away from Harborview Estate, Damien realized that sometimes the greatest of life's changes unfold amid someone else's celebration. He had come to witness Tyler's marriage, but was leaving with a new beginning all his own, one he couldn't wait to explore. A week later, with the wedding receding into fond memory, Damien found himself stepping out of a board meeting with an uncharacteristic grin. He immediately checked his phone, heart jumping at an unread text from Evelyn. "Guess who just scheduled a freelance client near your office next week? Got time for lunch?" He typed back with swift eagerness, "Name the day. I'll clear my calendar." The text ended with a small flourish of excitement. Indeed, everything had changed since that day he arrived at Harborview Estate. A single wedding ceremony had introduced him to the one person he couldn't stop thinking about, the maid of honor, who, with her genuine heart and spirited smile, broke through his formidable walls. Neither of them knew exactly how their story would play out, but both were certain about one thing: they wanted to find out together.